Welcome to another episode of season 2 of Dr. G at the Heart of Healthcare. We have a nice treat here today. We're going to kind of dibble dabble in the arts, but it's always related to healthcare. I have two guests here, Erin Whalen, the CEO of Compassionate Coaching, and John Johnson, the CEO of Verbal Gymnastics. And so we're just going to talk about things like standardized patients. So doctors, don't click off this line. We're going to talk about playback theater. We're going to talk about stomach cancer. Like, we're going to talk about all kind of things here, but it's going to be great. And the other thing that we want to avoid is burnout, which so many people in our healthcare system is in. So leaders of healthcare and hospice, listen, because you may need to use these guys to help your team. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us. So excited to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let me just tell the story real quick, and then we're just going to let this whole thing unravel. So Erin is, like a lot of people who are guests, one of my LinkedIn friends, and there was a post. Was it hospice nurse Shelley who asked how we got in hospice, or was it the Heart of Hospice?
I think it was Helen Bauer.
Helen Bauer, my girl in Texas.
Yep.
Yes. And so she asked how, 2 words, how we got into hospice. And I put standardized patient, and you were like, me too.
Yep. And most people are like, what's that?
Yeah. Why don't you tell the people what a standardized patient is?
Standardized patient, they're usually actors who are hired to work with medical students to learn how to do everything from like diagnose different things to how to talk compassionately to your patients. So that's how I actually have my background in being a standardized patient. And of course, you had the background working with a standardized patient in med school.
Yes, I would get graded, y'all. And then John, you did a little bit of work on that too, right?
Erin and I know one another from the standardized patient world, and we both worked for Kaiser Permanente for a number of years in their educational theater programs.
Yeah.
Oh, see, these are elite standardized patients, guys. Like we were so nervous and focused on trying to make sure we did the note right, but these are professionals.
Yeah, sometimes you'd have, like, as a standardized patient, you'd have 8-10 pages of script. You'd have to, like, this is your background. This is, what you had for breakfast, 3 years ago. And I mean, it got pretty intense sometimes, but it was a good gig.
So wait, I remember stuff from like the USMLE. They actually took that step 2 CS away, clinical skills, which was a challenging exam. That was something that was hard for me, and I would never know what I did wrong. They got rid of that test with COVID, but was that something that you aspire to?
I never went that route. And I was never like, oh, I'm going to be the gold standard of standardized patients. I'm going to be in the step 2. Like I don't even know where the nearest one, maybe like Philly or something, because I'm based out of DC. But I did train other standardized patients. I did get to the place where I was doing the training for a number of the more challenging cases where the actors and actresses had to really more emotionally invested situations or challenging situations, and I would train them. So that was my ladder in the standardized patient world that I climbed.
Yeah.
Go ahead, John.
Right, and I was going to say that in the standardized patient work that I think Erin and I have done, initially it is about like diagnosing someone, knowing when someone has a fatty liver, or and also for doctors but it was also emotional, right? So doctors have to talk about end of life care. They have to have hard conversations, and so I think we ended up more leaning towards like the empathy that is required as a skill set from a physician or a nurse, and then we went into more of the emotional aspect of medical care.
Thank you for saying that, because we're going to bring this back home. I'm having way too much fun with them guys. We're going to be friends when I visit DC next. But that's how I got into end of life care, is from my medical school, making us first year medical students go into a room and tell the people that there's end stage heart failure and start talking about goals of care, just cold. And so through that, and then me exploring things and obviously seeing with my own eyes the need for it during my training, then I chose it. So thank you for bringing us back to that. So I got too ahead of myself. So I want to go ahead and just give a brief bio of the two of you guys. So John, we'll start with you. So tell us about your background in theater, just kind of maybe 30-second bio of yourself.
Okay, so I'm a native Washingtonian, and like we talked a little earlier, that Washington D.C., former chocolate city, still some chocolate people here, but it had a heyday of a lot of Blackness and Black excellence, and it still does, but the city is changing quite a bit. My background is in theater. I have a degree from the University of the District of Columbia. I do a lot of work with African Americans over the age of 65, doing a lot of interviewing and just getting their stories, because they are our like living libraries. And I also partner with Erin in compassionate coaching and end-of-life care.
Wow. And Erin, your 30-second, what are your highlights?
My highlight reel. So I founded Compassionate Coaching in 2020, and that came after doing freelance acting for a number of years, things like standardized patient work, something that both John and I do called Playback theater, and then founded my company and just kind of swirled around for a while. And after founding my company and saying, who do I serve and how do I serve them? And then realizing that I had this skill set in playback theater and in communication skills coaching, essentially. And I wanted to use that because I knew that was where my skill set lied. I have a lot of training in empathy and can both facilitate and do professional role playing to help people communicate more effectively, more compassionately. And then eventually landed just about 2 years ago on, okay, the people I want to serve in those ways are people in the end of life field, people in the bereavement field, because y'all have really hard work, and burnout is real. And, people who are in that field are usually compelled or called or feel driven to it, by some sort of purpose-filled reason. And so I want to honor you all and help you stay in that field as long as you want and not have to leave it because you're burned out.
That's fantastic. Thank you for that work. And so that brings me to the other story. We have multiple stories here because stories are powerful, right? Hospice nurse Shelley, she had a post recently that talked about don't let a difficult day at work negatively impact your time at home. And then it said, if you work in the end of life field, you might be emotionally drained at the end of your workday. Listen to your 5-minute transition routine to help you transition from emotional overwhelm to peaceful presence. That's from your website. And so I saw that after I was in, Shelley's post, and then kind of wanted to know, like, how do we make sure our nurses can disconnect, turn off your phone when you're off for the weekend, don't answer, the email, like really unplug. So I was really intrigued by your 5-minute transition routine. And I know people probably need to log in or something to download it, or how does that work for folks?
Yeah, if you just go to my website, which will be in the show notes, but it's basically a free download. So you just enter your email and then you get it instantly sent to you over email. And it's just an audio file that I created, and it just helps you transition between work and then the rest of your life. So, a lot of stuff happens at work, a lot, and maybe you're not even working, in the trenches, in the field, at the bedside that day, but you're still surrounded by that world of grief, death, dying. So just take 5 minutes at the end of the workday to listen to the audio file, and then you can kind of move on to the rest of your life with a little bit of separation, because you don't want it all bleeding together and then you get lost and then you never feel like you've stopped working. You just feel like it's one big continuous job that you're doing, and it's helpful to have that separation.
Erin, is it possible you can tell us a few things from your 5-minute download, since we're on the podcast, that people could do?
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite things is to do, there are all sorts of different deep breathing techniques, but I personally love inhaling for 4, holding for 7, and then exhaling for 8. That's something that I walk people through. Another thing that I do is I repeat the mantra and invite them to repeat it. I am meant to be at peace. I am meant to be at peace, because I think peace is more about a state of being. And so if you can be at peace, whether you're holding the hand of someone who's dying, whether you're comforting the loved one who just had someone die in their presence, like whatever it is that you're doing, whatever circumstances you're around, you can still find peace and be at peace.
I took a deep breath just with you saying that. You see, like my shoulders went down.
Hey.
You know, my motto of Mourning Dove is providing peace of mind in healthcare, because it's so stressful for folks navigating it. And so, you know, that's why we try to find solutions. Well, thank you for saying that. And then I wanted to ask, you know, since we have 2 actors here, you know, I'm kind of obsessed with a few movies that I watch over and over again.
Yeah.
You know, got to go with Denzel, right? The Equalizer, and Ben Affleck. Like they just tell such great stories. So you guys can relate to this. And I hope I don't sound too silly asking this. John, how do you, because I think this applies to what we do in our work, because our hearts are in it. I'm talking about healthcare workers, hospice workers, but then we need to switch it off when we get home, like when put on our other hat of being a mom, being a whatever, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever we do. You guys tell stories. Sometimes you have to dive deep and, you know, touch some really sensitive places. I'm sure you do, John. So how do those skills kind of correlate here?
So when it comes to acting or playing back someone else's story, I think one of the things that we hold high or paramount is empathy, right? And in order to have empathy, a lot of times we think about putting yourself in someone else's shoes. So like, you know, Denzel Washington will become somebody different. That's why we like him so much. It's like we don't even see Denzel, we see the character. That would be super exhausting in the field of end of life care, right? If you feel everything that other folks feel. Now, there's certain times where you might be able to connect. You know, if someone's lost a loved one or mother and you've lost your mother, and you can share, and that's the connection that might happen. But oftentimes it's acknowledging those emotions in other people, right? So you seem sad right now because you're reminiscing of your mother, or your mother sounds like she's a great person. Having the love of a mother is wonderful. Those types of validating terms also help people feel seen and heard, right? And I think that's at the key of what we do, whether we're acting or whether we're just holding space with someone. It's just to acknowledge their emotional state, and also just to validate them, you know, and give them, you know, words of inspiration and compassion. And so we do that with acting too, you know, but we also play the entire stories out, which allows an audience, because especially if we do it in front of an audience, then there's all these witnesses and they can connect to being a human being. And also loss. Loss is something that we've all experienced. Like if you live to be over 21 years of age, then you can connect to someone else losing something. You know what I mean? Like especially a person or a loved one.
Yeah, I love that. So I learned while we were preparing for the show about playback theater, how it's been around. What year is that, Erin?
It was founded in 1975 by Jonathan Fox and Joe Salas.
That's a great year. Great people were born that year.
Were you born that year? I was born the next year. So
hey. Yeah. So Compassionate Coaching is a playback company.
Yes, we do other things, but the signature offering that we have involves playback theater. So I bring my whole team in. We have John is usually, I think always, the conductor for our playback performances. I'm one of the actors. We bring in more actors. We bring in a musician. So yes, through Compassionate Coaching, I've got a whole troupe of playbackers.
So this is a way to teach compassion. This is a way for people to kind of teams to bond. It's a way to have a therapeutic kind of relationship with stories for teams. So tell us how that works. So just in case someone wants to invite you to their employee retreat or something like that, how would this work? Like, who's showing up? I heard there's a musician, a conductor, there's stories, there's tables. Like, let's talk about it.
Okay, so essentially, there's always a pre-conversation where we want to find out about the team, about the theme, whether we're coming in for a portion of the retreat, like you said, or a team building event, or we've actually put on full day or half day retreats as well. That's something that we can do. But if there's a theme, like say the theme is on joy, how do you find joy? We use that theme for the playback performance. So the playback runs usually about 60 to 90 minutes. I think an in-person playback, the sweet spot is really 75 minutes if we just want to swoop in and do that. Or like I said, we can incorporate it into a larger half day, full day thing. And I bring my whole team, which is a conductor, which is usually John. And the conductor is the role of the facilitator for the process. Usually 3 to 5 actors, and then a musician. And the musician could be a vocalist, violinist. We just have a couple of different musicians with their different specialties that we work with. And based on that theme, how do you find joy? The conductor will invite people to share stories. And so he'll ask questions, he or she will ask questions like, tell me about joy. What do you think joy is? And we'll get some definitions and we'll get someone to share, like, how do you find joy? And well, let's just ask you, Dr. G, how do you find joy?
Well, I wake up in joy. My first name, Kayshana, is rejoicer, appointed by God. So the task of the person with me is not to mess that up. And if they do, they got to go. So anyway, no, I just have it. But, I will say in all seriousness, this podcast, while I was navigating the burnout of the pandemic, bringing it back became a source of joy for me because, still a lot of chaos at work. The patients and families don't see it, but, we know about it behind the scenes. And so when I saw something frustrating or whatever, I could create a podcast about it that would educate the people ahead of time so they wouldn't end up in these disastrous situations. And as a former teacher, that gave me great joy because I was empowering someone out there and they would have the information and like people are going to have the link to you. So I find joy by doing things for people. Service, it is actually.
Yeah. I was going to say one other thing about playback theater that's important is you share your own lived experiences, right? Mm-hmm. Like one of the rules is you have to talk about yourself. So even if you want to talk about your mother, you're talking about your relationship with your mother, because when we play back your story, the person who is the speaker or the teller is the term that we use, we are going to play back your story. So it is another opportunity just to get the microphone to the people, as opposed to a lot of times when folks come in, it's about the presenter. This is like, no, you guys are expert, subject experts on everything, on hospice care. So tell me why. Why did you choose this? Why are you spending your life energy in hospice? And then people will tell those stories. And they are fascinating when you ask someone why they do the work that they do, what motivates them to do those things. And that just makes people more connected once we create a safe space in the storytelling, and then we actually highlight it so people can witness all of the stories within the room.
Yeah. And then so after we hear that story, that we have those actors and the musician and they play back the story, right? They reflect it back. So if it was your story, Dr. G, of how you find joy, or if we'd heard your story about, why you do the work that you do, then the musician will immediately start playing music spontaneously. A lot of the time it's an improvised song based on what you just shared, sometimes using your own words to, incorporate into the song. The actors will play back different portions of your story and really elevate it with artistry. It's not necessarily a chronological playing back. It's not necessarily like a once upon a time and this person and this person. It's very artistic. It's very, I might be the name Kashana, right? Like that might be the thing that I play back as one of the actors.
I might come in as a kid, as you were a teacher. Like, so we would give you all these bits and pieces of the narration. And you get to just sit and watch and witness your own story come back to life.
I can imagine people start crying.
Very much so.
Yes. In fact, when we do these in person, we can do it virtually, but when we do it in person, I bring little branded tissues little compassionate coaching tissues, because it's like inevitably people will cry 100%.
And the crying is oftentimes, because some stories are sad or happy, they're tears of joy and sadness. But the other part is actually having your voice heard. In a room full of 50 people, 100 folks. You're talking about the essence of who you are, like why you're choosing to get up every day and come to work and involved in this field. And usually it's very personal why people choose to do the work that they do, if they're blessed enough to do something that they love, right? So it is a very powerful art form to use across the board. And Erin has chose end-of-life care to use that tool.
Thank you for that, Erin. So if you had to look, I'm like, wait a minute, we're going to have the NHPCO leadership conference soon. I'm like, you should be in that next year. You know what I'm saying? Like, or the academy, like this needs to be a part of these things so that we can just, we know enough stuff. We can read the article. We need this, more of this. I know I've had narrative medicine sessions like at, conferences. I participated in things like that, but it just seems like it would be nice to have this. How would you pitch this to the people? I'm about to go send them this podcast.
Yeah, send them the podcast. We've been very honored to be a part of 2 of NHPCO's virtual conferences. Would love to do one of their in-person ones coming up. That would be fantastic too. Yeah. So it's actually on my website. If people want to reach out to us about speaking engagements or conferences, we love doing conferences, and it is so unique and it's so memorable because you leave the conference and you're like, I have no idea. Like, it's just so much, in your brain when you leave a conference, you're like, I can't tell you 3 things that I learned because it's just so much. But like, if you see playback at a conference, you're like, oh my gosh, like you will just remember it. So conferences are one of our favorite things to do.
Yeah. And your story is your DNA, right? Like it is who you are, so like whenever you get the opportunity to tell a story about something you care about, it's usually very powerful.
Well, hospital administrators too, if you want all the doctors to stop resigning and becoming online coaches, nothing against coaches, but we have enough coaches out there, right? It's like, I belong to an organization where I do mentorship, and, I get concerned, with the pre-meds coming and the people who, watch Doc McStuff or they want to be like me, but they're seeing everybody resigning because they're burned out. It's just, kind of disheartening. Like, what can we do to keep our workforce and help them? Things like this. We need retreats. We need to pause right. and enrich us.
Yes. That's exactly it. And they know, it's to their benefit too, because the cost, like the financial cost of turnover and recruiting and reorienting, and that is just, it's to their benefit to take excellent care of the people that work there, because it's best for everyone. It's best for continuity of care. It's best for patients. It's best for the organization. It's best for the workers to not get burned out and want to leave the field.
Yeah, while we were talking also, John, you shared how you had a session at a cancer summit and how that was very humbling for you. Would you share just a little bit of that? And then we're going to go back to Erin with the mission.
Yeah, so we did Playback theater at a stomach cancer summit in DC, and it's an annual summit. And I remember being on the call, and they were saying that the folks who make it to this year's summit, 90% of them won't make it to the summit the following year because stomach cancer is such a horrific diagnosis to have. So, but initially we were like, oh, like how do we go into this space? We had all these meetings about like how do we hold space, and then once we just relaxed and we just honored the stories in the room, it was actually quite beautiful, and it was a room full of people who just wanted to live. And they talked about the things they love, like their children, wanting to see their children graduate from high school, or some folks who might have been rollerbladers, and like that's the only time they find peace, because it's very stressful to know you have something that could be terminal. And then we just honored those stories back, and it just made people like to see what you love doing. Is wonderful to see, and to be in a room where that's your tribe is also comforting too. So we use the art form just to elevate people's stories, and also just to give some solace that your story is important. Everyone's story is important. And the last little thing I want to say about Playback that I think is really powerful is the act of just speaking your story is very validating. And it gives you like, I deserve to be here. I'm a human being. I'm in the land of the living. And this is all of the things that I've been through. These are my aspirations. To be able to do that is just, it fills you up, and some folks are nervous. And that's, again, we have a system in making sure that folks feel comfortable. And, the conductor also asks follow-up questions so that you can get your whole story out. And then you get to see yourself. You get to literally witness. There's a term that we use called let's watch. Once you finish your story, we get the whole audience to say your name and let's watch. And then all of the actors and musicians, everything comes to life. And you get to sit in the chair and watch everything that you just said.
You see my eyes about to water? I didn't even do it, and I feel it. You guys said this before. I hear you dropping these little gems. You said earlier being moved by the spirit and things like that. So we know what this is about. So Erin, I want to go back to your mission. I put it in my notes here. You said to restore dignity to the grieving and the dying, and to help them feel seen and heard by filling the cups and providing communication tools to those who serve them. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. I mean, it feels like that's, it's a tall order, but it's like, look, I can't, maybe someday I will, but at this point in my life, I can't be at the bedside of someone who is dying. That's not within my capacity right now. And so, I look to the people who do that, and I say thank you, and we need you. So it's my way of giving, what I've been blessed with in talent to fill the cups of those people who are at the bedside, because we all need to honor, we're all going to die. Like, we all need to start talking more about it, and to honor that process of death and dying and grief, and to really just, all do our part to make that process more dignified and more beautiful.
Yeah. And oftentimes I say, I really appreciate what Erin is saying too, because oftentimes we only think about death when we're at a funeral, or, or someone passes away, right? But we don't have, other than maybe you're like, I need some life insurance. Like the conversation about death is something that's considered taboo, because especially in America, where we're all like, we need to stay youthful. Let me dye the hair in my beard so I can, like we try not to die, right? So, but we don't talk about it. And so I think normalizing the discussion around end of life and death is super important, so that we can not be so traumatized by it, right? Like we all are going to die. That's the one thing that we know. So I think it's important that people still, that there's a support around the people who sit next to the bed, and the discussion continues outside of hospice, that that we talk about this in other places, so that we become a little bit more stable when these things come, when grandma passes away, or so that we've had these pre-conversations before these things actually happen.
And there it is. The spirit has led us to what's important. There's a lot of our healthcare system is fractured, right? So sometimes people come to hospice. They don't know they're on hospice. They don't know that the person was dying. They're surprised. They're wondering why they have to stop this medication. So I really, really, truly believe that playback theater and things like compassionate coaching is something great to teach our specialists, or to enrich them. We don't want to tell them we're teaching them. We want to, be careful with our words, but a way to coach them into having these conversations upstream. Uncomfortable conversations, the thing that my medical school put me in that made it normal for me, but normalizing an oncologist talking about, down the road, at some point, you probably will be on hospice. Not that it's bad news. That doesn't mean I'm a failure. That's the type of care that we're on when you're not getting treatment, or having the pulmonologist say, hey, the COPD is getting pretty bad, or just when it's diagnosed. At some point, you will go to hospice care and it's okay. This is what's going to happen. But a lot of people don't know the trajectory, or they didn't hear it from their doctor that they trust. I've had people recently say they thought they made their oncologist mad by talking to palliative care. And how sad is that, to think that, well, to carry that burden when the healthcare is supposed to be for you. And I'm not saying their oncologist did anything wrong, but the sick person is carrying a burden of thinking they upset the doctor when they are the one, so we have to flip that. And I think Playback Theater, through both of your companies, is a great way. Erin, thank you for founding this. I know you shared a little bit about your sister and anticipatory grief and all that. So I'll let you wrap us up in, how this can help our healthcare system, because that's what I want to do ultimately with this show.
Yeah. I mean, as you know, it is a fractured system, and I think we all need to do our part to make it better. The more I'm thinking about it, the more I want to be one of the people who helps bridge that conversation between non-hospice healthcare and hospice, right? Or even, palliative care is already kind of the bridging that, but I want to be there to support that process too, because it is about helping all healthcare professionals have those hard conversations early. Because as we know, people are not on hospice getting those benefits long enough. They find out too late. And it's just tragic. It's tragic, and it doesn't have to be that way. So, one of the things we do is we have that communication skills coaching. We can be, John and I do professional role playing where we can help people have those challenging conversations, practice it, get feedback, enrich professional development. I'm not teaching you anything, but practice those conversations early so that hospice can do their beautiful, beautiful work as long as they can, right? With their clients, their patients, as long as they can get those referrals early. So I want to be there to help start the process earlier. So help people have those conversations as early as possible. Healthcare professionals need to practice that and to know they have not failed, because they're taught to diagnose and treat. Unfortunately, that's kind of the mentality of, if your patient dies, you failed, is the subliminal message that is just woven into medical school in a way, right? Because you're supposed to find out what's wrong and get them better. Like that's the goal. But the goal is actually not congruent with the fact that we are going to die. And so to do more of that in med school, and, for all physicians, all healthcare professionals, to help them say, wait a minute, like, it's to my patient's benefit to do this earlier, to have this conversation earlier.
Yes. And we can, I call it physician enrichment. I actually, did a workshop on this previously, and it will help us, and it will, like you said, benefit everyone. Not everyone had a med school like me. I just went to medical school not too long ago, where they introduced it. Maybe they've been a doctor for 30, 40 years, and, they just don't go there. So I think this coaching would be great for a lot of folks. And I just thank you for your work, and thank you for being here. Any last words, John, before we sign out?
Yeah, and I was just going to say, I think compassionate coaching, playback theater is useful not only for the healthcare providers, but also for the caregivers, right? And for the survivors of those folks who've lost their loved ones, because then there's grief and there's memory of these people. So those folks who are still, after death, life still goes on, right? There are people who have those memories and those stories, and they want to share them. I mean, we as human beings, we just went through COVID, right? There are COVID stories that people still haven't shared, right? Because we were really super scared and hoarding toilet paper. But then there's other stories that we haven't told yet. So I just think that, this artwork, merging art and storytelling with end of life care is just a beautiful thing that should continue to happen.
Amen. And so, yeah, I had a grief counselor on the podcast, and she defined grief as when love meets loss. And I said, wow, that's it. And so we'll just drop the mic on that. Thank you two for being here. We had a great conversation. People visit these websites of these talented actors. And we're going to sign out. Dr. G at the Heart of Healthcare. Peace.